motion to adopt the agenda of the special council meeting of Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. Councillor Stetsky, seconded by Councillor Popoff. All in favor? Carried. We have one item on the agenda this afternoon, a report from Finance regarding the 2024 City of Cranbrook Municipal Grant Program. I will now turn the meeting over to Charlotte, the Director of Finance, to provide an overview of the report and walk council through the discussion. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
It's not bad at all.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Acting Mayor. So today we're here to review the applications for the city's municipal grant program. And there's a new policy that council adopted in June. So this is our first year moving through using that grant policy. The grant policy was based on, in large part, past practice, but certainly we did some updating to some of those practices and incorporated some additional rigor around the evaluation process that council will go through. So we have two things that are happening today based on the need to go through the applications, but also based on some requests from council to take a look at potential budget reductions to the overall program. So because it's a bit multifaceted, I see us sort of doing this in two stages. The first stage, what we've done is we've incorporated council's award recommendations for each of the applications. And we have provided an average. I know we had discussions last year about averages and how that wasn't really what council was looking for, but just as a place to start, I think, that's a place where we can take off from our discussions from. A couple of things on the applications where there were less than three, where there were three or less award recommendations from council, the spreadsheet represents 0. That means that 4 of you did not support an award to at least 4 of you did not support an award to the applicant. There was one councillor, Councillor Ray, who made some recommendations about entering into long-term multi-year agreements. So that's a conversation we'll have today as well. And then Melissa ran a calculation highlighting which applications received the most support from the majority of council. So can you? So we are working with live spreadsheets today. So just bear with us if there's a little bit of tweaking we need to do. So the highlighted, can you maybe hide some of those columns, Melissa? So we can see who the applicants are. So the yellow, the highlighted yellow in column Q are showing that 87% of the funding are of council. I'm going to actually let Melissa explain what that percentage means.
Okay, so what it was, let me just think about this.
I think it's 87% of the ask.
Yeah, so 87% of the amount requested. So the Boys and Girls Club requested 5,000. The council average was 43.57, which represents 87% of their ask.
So we thought that perhaps this was a way to highlight where council might be in agreement on what what some of the top priorities will be in terms of who should be funded. And that's a little bit that is important, as when we go to having the discussion around whether or not how far council wants to cut the budget, because are there some of these high priority applicants who council wants to be locked in at either 100% of the ask or some portion of the ask? Because once we get to looking at lowering the budget, there will be a prorating exercise required. So if there are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 applicants that council would like to lock in, perhaps at the full amount requested, then those applications would be possibly exempted from the reduction in the budget, as an example. So, you know, that's why we did those calculations. Melissa has highlighted with the blue lines the applicants that had less than 50% council support. Just a comment on those long-term funding agreements. What you should maybe think about is, while there was only one councillor who identified applications that possibly should be considered for long-term funding agreements, that, you know, that wasn't, you know, perhaps something that was on everyone's front, that was at the front of everyone's mind. So perhaps what we want to do is, when we get to that point and having that discussion, maybe there's a discussion around, again, the majority requiring, needing to agree to a long-term funding agreement for a particular applicant, as an example. So just throwing that out there. I'm not asking for a discussion right now, but when we come to it. We have 2 hours today. We are in a special meeting. We can make a decision today. So what I would like to ask, while this is important and for not just for council, but for the city, but certainly for the applicants, it's, you know, let's move, you know, keep moving along and not get stuck on something. Having said that, if we need more time, there's more time. This is not by bylaw, as the permissive tax exemptions were. So really, this decision, if you want to defer it until we have the 5-year financial plan done, you can do that. I hope we don't, but there is no other bylaw that requires council's consideration on which there's a time limit. So I have been asked to invite each member of council to give a very brief explanation of your general approach to awards. This is not an invitation to go through each of your awards. It is an invitation for you to express your general approach to your recommendations. So I would invite Councillor Stetsky to perhaps start that discussion.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Melissa, for all of your hard work on this. It's a big process for sure. So when I went through the scoring, I guess just a couple of things. Interested to see the lack of support for some of the environmental proposals. I truly believe that a healthy Cranbrook also deserves to have a healthy environment. And quite frankly, historically, Cranbrook hasn't been all that friendly, appeared all that friendly to environmental groups. And so I did want to support them, and I did in terms of the proposal that I put forward, because the health of our community, of course, is a healthy environment. It's healthy economically, and also, of course, healthy through social aspects. And of course, a lot of the applications that we get deal with some of the social aspects of our community. So when I went through it, and I did read all of the proposals, I did not score them using the scoring matrix. I'll see that right up front. I'm very familiar with virtually all of these organizations from over the years. And so I tried to allocate funding in such a way that it recognized virtually all of the groups, with my apology to the Rotary Club for a 0 on their money. And that's partly because Councillor Popoff has told us many times that right now anyway, that might not be the case in the future, but the Cranbrook Rotary Club is doing quite well financially. Also, I did not support the $230,000 ask from the Chunaha Kinbask Child and Family Services. That was just out of scope, I guess, from my perspective. And then, of course, the Dwelling Place Church Ministries being a capital project doesn't fit with our criteria at all. So I think, looking at the averages that were up on the board earlier, I'm very happy to look at them and discuss them. There was nothing that really stood out in my mind other than the zeros for the environmental groups that were applying for funding.
Okay. Councillor Blissett?
When it comes, I do have a comment. I didn't support some of the things that I thought will be funded by other organizations. And one of them being education, because the school board pays for education. So if the environmental stuff is on education, then I don't support it. It's not that I don't support the environment at all. So I kind of object to those comments, but I did try to look at about using the grant application evaluation criteria and scoring matrix as a guideline, but also looking at trying to balance different types of things. So the arts as well as some of the social groups. And I do think that, and also one of the things that I like about not having a long-standing agreement is that we can look at what are the important issues right now in Cranbrook. And that's why I would of course want to see us fully funding Street Angels and the food bank, because that's a big issue in town, and we talk about those social issues all the time, and Street Angels provides a huge service to us, as does the food bank. So I really wouldn't want to see those reduced in any fashion. And then, of course, as a city, we have others, Sam Steele Day, not Sam Steele Days, whatever it is, Spirit of the Rockies Days is a community event. And same with the Canada Day celebration is brought, like it affects the entire community, which I think is what our taxation can do, is support our entire community. So I do support that.
Thank you, Councillor Blissett. We'll move on to Mayor Price.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, I as well did not use the matrix. I was having some technical issues here, getting the stuff put together. Anyways, as with Wayne, I think I'm familiar with pretty well all of the organizations and what they do, and I believe, in my mind, what their impact is. So, I looked at their presence within the community, and my perspective of their value to the community. I looked at some of them where, how do they support some of council's new budgetary priorities, for example, anything to do with our social issues. I supported them. Obviously, the homelessness and our whole new initiative they're doing with the social problems, the Street Angels, etc. I think should be fully funded on those types of things for sure, because they are directly actually assisting the city with our endeavors there. So what I at the end of the day did was just try to be fair, but and also holding the line. I think I was probably a little tougher on some of the ones that had been before us before. I did, and just because of the way our budget looks this year, it's time to start, being a little bit more critical, and just, I think we've got to hold the line. I don't know if we're going to be talking about, I know a couple of councillors had mentioned a flavor to maybe start to consider that we get away the grant process altogether. And my quick comment on that, and maybe it's something we look at down the road. I don't have a flavor for that in the immediate future this year or probably next year. I just think there's just too many of these issues going on in the community, especially the social issues we got that are relying on these. And I think we've got an obligation to fund those. And we can't just pick 2 or 3 or 4 of those and let the rest go. So, status quo for another year or two, and I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Price. We'll move on to Councillor Graham.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I looked at a few factors I took into account our current state of finances. I referenced the matrix that was provided, and also looked at previous funding for organizations and their impacts on the community, both with, say, social issues as well as local economy with community events.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. Great comments all around the table. So as I was going through it, I was looking at the request. Is there other alternate funding options rather than through our city tax piece, i.e. the Rotary clubs, because we do have money, and others. Also, which applicants do not directly provide benefit to the residents of Cranbrook versus maybe regional district or other bodies? FYI, the Rotary is for our Rotary Scott Villa, which is a hard to house rental complex. So if we don't support it, then that value will just be added on to the rent next time around. And I gave them 0 as well. In some direct, obvious situations, the regional district, which is a broader funding base, should maybe consider these requests rather than directly to our taxpayer base. A question also is, if they don't get this funding, then what's the consequence? Is this just funding just to supplement a broader budget list of millions of dollars in some cases, or is this critical to the actual value of that applicant? There are a few that actually are doing the work of the city of Cranbrook that we would probably be doing as an alternate if they didn't do it. So they're just doing our work, and I think I had about an $11,000 shortfall. So I'm willing to talk about that, but I think it's okay to have a shortfall on these because I think we have to be fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. As others have mentioned, I also approached this through the lens of fiscal responsibility. So I based my numbers aiming for the 2023 budget total that we had available. So saving about $22,000 in change, which I know is a small amount, but it is, every little bit counts in this budget season. So my numbers are based on that, and my total is the same as the 2023 total. I had a close look at each of the applications, including looking at their financials, and just once again that message that we really encourage all nonprofits to be actively working on diversifying their revenue streams. And I know it's extra work, but corporate sponsors, service clubs, etc., other granting sources. So I just particularly when we see applications that maybe the last few years that haven't been diversifying into other revenue streams, I just strongly encourage all nonprofits and certainly applicants to this program to be looking at additional revenue sources. I appreciate that we had the scoring matrix. I did not score each application. However, the scoring matrix did refer to recommending multi-year agreements, which is why I did that. And I know I probably went a little overboard on that, and it's okay if folks don't agree at all. There may be some room, I think, to maybe look at a few. I just think when we have these every year, these folks are applying, we all see it as our priority. Everyone's time is valuable, our time here as well as the applicant's time. So I just think for efficiency and where it aligns with our strategic plan, I would ask the table to consider at least maybe some of these multi-year agreements. And the timeline I was looking at is the term of this council. So it's not huge like the time. So I was looking at 2024 to 2026. So I put that out there for discussion, and it's wherever we land is fine. But that's where I got that was part of the scoring matrix. So I appreciate having that there. I mentioned alignment with our strategic plan, and just in terms of potential process improvements for future years, I think this year has highlighted that there may be value in us considering in our procedure, perhaps, that we identify a clear range for grant, the size of requests with maybe a suggested low. Like a year or two ago, we had a grant for $600. So it could range from a few $100s up to, and then a cap. I really see this as a small and at the outside medium-sized grant program. This is not a large granting program. And I think it's helpful if we can manage expectations moving forward. It just, I think, saves everybody some time and energy. So I would just suggest that for future discussion in terms of a process improvement. Having said that, I appreciate all the work that's gone into the new and improved granting process.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. I would say my comments are very similar to what was said around the table. One of the big things for me was looking at the financials of the grants and the organization, and seeing what would happen if we didn't, give them the money. Would they still be able to put this program on? And if they had a couple $100,000 in their bank account, then I wasn't too friendly. And I think also this year, and this is the first year where I've really questioned whether or not we should be providing grants to nonprofits. Looking at what we spend here on these grants, that's a full-time position that we could fulfill. So taking away that $127,000 in grant funding might be better off for the municipality and more favorable to our taxpayers. So I guess saying that, at this point, I don't support the long-term funding of the different groups, because I don't know if I actually support funding any of the groups. I did have one question, and that was about the Living Lakes Canada Society, and that was the groundwater monitoring program. And I have it down for zero funding, but then I don't know if that is actually useful information for our staff. Having that groundwater monitoring and $5,000 is actually, yeah, if that's actually a very affordable source of information. Like, are we going to be doing a groundwater study and spending $50,000 on that in 5 years? Are we getting away with it for $5,000? So I don't know if that can be answered. I did do the scoring matrix as well, but I will also admit that I paid a lot more attention to probably the first 10. And then when I got to like number 18 and 19 and 20, I was just like, I'll give them 6s across the board. I was getting pretty burnt out near the end of it. So yeah, I was not as generous this year as I have been in past. And I think a lot of that is just due to our budget constraints and whether or not I really felt like the project was necessary for our community.
Thank you, Council. That was excellent. Melissa and I are looking at, actually, Ross, if you could put the spreadsheet back up. So as I alluded to earlier, we've calculated the averages, and that's problematic in that if 4 members of council are generous and 3 are not, and we're still dividing by 7, so we could propose to say, since more than the majority, or at least the majority, elected to provide a grant to an applicant, that we would then, the denominator would then be the number of councillors who awarded. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Although I appreciate the thinking behind that suggestion, I value that folks rated certain grants at 0, and I think that their number should be included in the calculation as everyone else's is.
Okay. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. We need to take everybody's views into account on the scoring.
Thank you for that. So another issue or not, is some counselors took a position of, Counselor Ray, for example, you elected to award to last year's total. Counselor Peabody, your allocation was lower. So I'm just going to get Melissa to show the average. Where are we at with the average award? So we're at 124 out of 144. So you can see at the bottom, $20,000 is what we're saving. With the existing commitments, the four, we're at 277,000 versus 297, which is the budget. So the savings there is the $20,000. So is there interest from council at looking at going below that? If there is, we have another spreadsheet we can walk you through. That's one thing. The other thing that we talked about last year was this idea that some of these averages are ending up with weird numbers. So I like the idea of maybe just cleaning those up a little bit. So Melissa, will you go up, please? Yeah, so for example, 10,366, does it become 10,4?
So Charlotte, we do have a suggestion from Councillor Blissett, and I'd say I agree with her that if we just start at the top, work our way down, and then we can just, if one of the councillors wants to advocate that we either give them more
Sure.
funding or less,
I think that's a great idea.
then we can go from
Yeah,
there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation we would have ended up at anyway.
Okay, Councillor Ray and then Councillor Popoff.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I think that's a great suggestion. Look forward to doing that with everybody. Just to put this out there, I think I shared this last year as somebody who is involved with granting in my day job. Recipients are totally happy to receive a check, which is an odd amount. I wouldn't be, it is what it is when you have funds and a number of applications. So to me, I wouldn't worry about the details of the numbers. Folks are happy to deposit the check.
But does our finance team like odd numbers? No. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Popoff.
Thank you. I'm fine if the value ends in 19 cents for those reasons. I also, if we're going to do line by line, those that already have the zero, let's pass on those because the majority have already spoken on that. We can always go back at another phase if we still feel we want to spend some more money, but let's for the first run just pass on those that already have the zero on.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Price, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking, I know we've done this in the past, gone through and, adjusted and if we had money remaining, we would replace it in certain areas. I wonder if it's even worth the exercise. I mean, every member of council has gone through this. They put their values in place, and this is an average. I think we should just say close the book on it. And if there's 20,000, there's 80,000, whatever's left over, that's what's left over. I mean, the exercise was done once, and it's kind of, when we get to this point, it's almost like we used to do the surpluses. Accumulated surplus used to be Christmas at the end of the year. Nothing went into reserves, et cetera, et cetera. There's other places we can probably use this money, So anyways, that's just my thought on it. We've made our decisions. We put it in, and this is an average of council. It's just my thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Councillor Blissett.
The only thing is I really would I feel quite strongly about supporting Street Angels and the food bank. I think they've kept their ask at the same for years and years, and they provide an invaluable service to us. And I really want them to think that we are supportive and appreciative of the work they are doing. In particular, like, not that the others were not, but particularly those in this time. I think it's not a good message to the public that we didn't fully fund those organizations that are really saving us from a lot of bad stuff in town. So I just, I mean, they're all good organizations. They all need that. But that's where I don't like those averages on a couple of those things, because I think it lowers it and I mean, it's only lowering it by a bit. So why bother? Why not fully fund those if they're that close?
Okay, Councillor Popoff.
Thank you. So maybe before we target one in particular, and I don't disagree, let's get all the numbers, write them down so I can see them right on my piece of paper. And then if there's something extraordinary that comes to our attention that we really want to advocate for, other than that already has the zero onto it, then we can have those discussions.
Okay. So we're on the British Columbia Conservation Foundation. I think me speaking to this, we haven't, we're on that one. Item number 2. Yeah.
My point was, let's get all the numbers and then we can go back and reflect on
But the
them.
numbers are there already. Yeah. The reason why I didn't, or did I give this one funding? Oh, look at me. Yeah, I think I was being nice and early on. Yeah, I would argue whether the city should be funding this program. It's not a program that we funded in the past. So if we wanted to take that $3,000 away, I would be agreeable to that. Councillor Stetsky.
Again, looking at, what the kind of educational, and I know it's educational work that they do. I do think it's important that, and I'll go back to what I said in the beginning, that the city of Cranbrook does seriously look at conservation initiatives and consider them important. And so 3,000 is a long ways from 9,500, but I think it's certainly better than nothing. And then when we get down to further down, I'm going to raise it again with Wildside.
Okay, Councillor Graham and then Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll just kind of reiterate what Mayor Price said. I think if somebody has an issue or wants to get rid of one of the lines like you had just suggested, I feel it should be done in a motion, so at least we got a seconder. Otherwise, we'll just debate it. Well, I want it, you don't want it. Can we at least get 2 people in agreement, then have a discussion or something? Because otherwise we could pick this apart. Like, I'm totally fine accepting what's on the board right now. I'm fine with that. That's what the council averages. That's where we are. Yeah, maybe because we ended with 20,000 and we want to, if we're in agreement with Street Angels or the food bank, to up the $100 or $200 there. But again, I'm very happy with what's on the board.
Okay, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Overall, I'm pleased with and happy to move forward with the averages. I think it might be helpful just to do a very quick grant by grant, not long confirmation. I think our default could be the average. Maybe what I would suggest is if an individual counselor, through discussion or just further reflection, wants to change their own score, that will then change the average. And then the onus is on the individual with maybe conversation around the table or further reflection. They may say, oh, okay, I would like to actually change my number. Then that onus is on that individual. But yeah, I think if our default could kind of be the average, and then the discussion around where we want to make an adjustment to provide full funding. And I think we're in a good place of looking at having a modest cost savings, with that lens of fiscal responsibility. So if we could just do a quick line by line discussion, average is the default, and kind of go from there. But with individual counselors, if someone wants to change their score, that will change the average.
CFO Osborne.
So I'm not sure, is the mayor's hand raised? Oh, okay. So what I propose I'll do then is I'm going to walk through each line, call out the average, and if anyone has an issue with the average, raise your hand.
Mhm.
Speak for a few seconds, and we'll see how that goes. So I think we're good with the British Columbia Conservation Foundation. The next item is the Community Connection Society of Southeastern BC. The average there is $7,073. The next item is the Cranbrook Boys and Girls Club. The proposed award is $4,357. The next item is the Cranbrook Cranbrook Community Theater, which is the studio building. The recommended award is $8,571. Okay, so we have two folks. Councillor Blissett.
Thank you. So that is our building, isn't it? And so, and they're looking at doing maintenance to it and some improvements. So that's why I went with full funding on that, because that organization is able to do the work at a pretty efficient cost, I think, to us. And it is it's kind of our obligation, I think, to maintain the building too.
Councillor Popoff.
I agree 110% with Councillor Bissett.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, I approved funding for the maintenance that they suggested. I didn't approve funding for putting on programs because the programs actually did bring in a profit last year. So they had a $30,000 profit. So I feel like it's sustaining itself as far as entertainment goes, but happy to pay for the repairs. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I took the same approach as Councillor Peabody on that question.
So for council's information, the award right now is $8,571. Okay. Thank you. The next applicant is the Cranbrook and District Arts Council. The proposed award is $25,071. Thank you. The Cranbrook and District Search and Rescue recommended award is $15,393. Thank you. The next applicant is the Cranbrook Food Bank Society. The recommended award is, I'm sorry, I haven't been saying the request. So the request is $5,000. The recommended award is $4,857. Councillor Stetsky.
Sorry, Councillor Stetsky.
And given the surplus and the importance of that program, I'll support Councillor Blissett's interest in having it increased to 5,000.
Council, all right, so increase that to 5,000, please. Thank you. Following the food bank is the Cranbrook Rotary, oh, sorry, that's a zero. Cranbrook Seniors in Partnership Society, formerly the Cranbrook Age Friendly group. Their request was for $7,000. The recommended award is $3,571. Good.
Sorry, Councillor Ray.
Thank you. This may not change any minds, and that's totally fine. The Seniors in Partnership, very glad they're in our community, appreciate the work they do. So they were looking at an information booklet in hard copy. So I'll just give an example. The Cranbrook Food Bank, in collaboration with the other food providers in town, they've all worked together to do a food schedule that's maintained online. So it shows all the places, Salvation Army, Street Angels, etc., where folks can get food. They maintain it online. There's no cost. You can print it out if you want. So to me, that's a very efficient way to do it. You can update it immediately online, send out the update. So this is a hard copy, that type of contact information resource for $7,000. I do not believe that's an effective use of funds. I appreciate the work this group does, but that is why I allocated 0 to this project, because I believe there's online accessible solutions with hard copy backup that can easily be done. So I just wanted to share that with you. If anyone is interested in changing their score, I scored this project as 0 because I believe there's no cost online solutions that can provide the same service.
Councillor Blissett.
I agree. Also, the idea that you can update it regularly and a hard copy version is going to be out of date practically as soon as it's printed. And then considering I'm a senior now, like, you know, and many seniors are quite computer literate. Some aren't, but then it could be printed off for them. So I do think that I just didn't see the value in a hard copy, but that's why I didn't allocate any resources to this project.
Okay, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, and we have reduced the amount that they've asked for, but quite frankly, I know a lot of seniors that are not online. They will not find it, and so I do think there need to be some printed hard copies available for seniors. So that's why I support the grant continuing.
I didn't support this for the same reasons as Councillor Ray and Councillor Blissett. I think we're putting $7,000 into the recycle bin, and that this booklet will just not get used, in my opinion. Sorry, Councillor Stetsky.
A quick response. There was one done a number of years ago, and I know okay. Yeah, there was one produced, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and even though I wasn't a senior, I kept the hard copy, and I found it quite good to reference when seniors did ask where they could go for different services, and so having a hard copy in hand was certainly beneficial from my perspective to help seniors at the time.
I guess if that's the situation, I will keep the number where it is.
Thank you, Council. So Fisher Peak Performing Arts Society has requested $5,000. The recommended award is $4,714.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I would like to see this at $5,000. We've talked previously about the vibrancy and economic development spin-offs, support of the arts. I would like to see this at $5,000. If the table is at all open to that.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, I would support that.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I would support that as well.
Yeah, I'm also in support of that.
Okay. The next applicant is the Tanaha Nation Council Street Angel Program. The request is for $12,000. The recommended award is $11,714.
Yeah, I think we're $300 away. I'm more than supportive to make it $12,000.
Okay, 12,000. Next, we have the Spirit of the Rocky Society, formerly the Sam Steele Society. The ask is for $10,000. The recommended award is $9,000.
Councillor Stetsky. Yeah, it's green at the top.
It gave me a fake green light. Anyway, Councillor Peabody raised the question, and Mark, I don't know whether you have the answer. And Ron, I don't know whether you or I have the answer. We attended some of the sessions, but water is critical. And if this is information that is important to decisions we make around groundwater and use of groundwater in the future, then it's worth funding. But again, I'm not clear either on how important that information is collectively.
Acting Mayor, through to Councillor Stetsky, I didn't see the application and know the scope and scale of what the proposed study was. I don't know if that was part of the application or not.
Councillor Graham.
yeah, I guess I'm the only one that fully funded it, so I must have been passionate about it at that moment. But it was, to me, I felt from what I was understanding was that it could be beneficial to us to get some information on where we sit with groundwater. I know that there's a lot of debate around subdivision outside of our boundaries and at the regional district, and always it comes up is where's the water table at? What's the groundwater at? What's the quality at? And so I felt that this might be able to provide some insight to it, so I was supportive of it, but that was my rationale behind a full fund.
Councillor Popoff.
Thank you. I did not support it. Not that I wasn't passionate about the environmental work, but it really didn't come out in the application what the true potential was, value for the city and for the data and where that data was going to be going and used for with the Ministry of Environment and other agencies. Having attended a few of the Living Lakes events, it's great. I just don't see, it wasn't articulated in the report, that value directly back to the citizens or for our future work. Should the applicant want to apply next year with some more granular detail of those impacts for the residents of Cranbrook and for the city staff, I would welcome reading it again.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I'll just read from their application, and I think you're right, Councillor Popoff. It's difficult to tell. I mean, they do say the project will monitor and provide data on groundwater levels and will increase groundwater literacy by engaging students in the groundwater monitoring program. And above that, they said they will collect groundwater levels in a volunteer observation well owned by the city of Cranbrook, which in collaboration with Living Lakes Canada is monitored as part of its Columbia Basin groundwater monitoring programs. And then they talk mostly about the kind of educational aspect. So it's difficult to sort through.
Yeah, it does sound to me like it would simply be reading from an existing groundwater monitoring well that we have, so.
So at the regional district, when we have brought up about groundwater issues, then there's a groundwater study done at that area. And it's quite in depth and it looks at the impact, like it's quite a detailed study. What they're talking about here from what I read is a school project and that they are, going to support that. So I think I'm okay with not funding this.
I'm okay with not funding it as well, but Mark, if you mind, maybe just sending the application to Mark or Jason Perot, and then he can quickly look at it. If he's passionate about it, he can come back to council, and if not, we can just forget about it. Councilor Ray. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Acting Mayor. My understanding is Living Lakes Canada is looking at, what do they call it? It's about citizen scientists. And so looking for folks throughout the region who have a well on their property that they can then use. They presented recently to the RDEK. So last year they applied to the CBT Ready Grants program, and I am 99.9% sure that they were approved for funding. To my mind, this is a regional program. Did specifically include an educational component that's around the College of the Rockies. I don't think this is core to the city of Cranbrook. I would be happy to provide the information to our, folks in the water department, but I actually wouldn't hinge their feedback on our decision. I think we've established a process. Unless an individual counselor wants to change their rating, I think this is at a 0. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the work they do. I don't think it's a fit for this granting program.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you, Council. So I think we left off at the Spirit of the Rockies Society.
Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. If the table would be at all open to considering a $10,000 grant, I think, Spirit of the Rockies does amazing work. They have worked very hard on diversifying their revenue sources in terms of corporate sponsorships. I know last year I gathered they sought and received a number of grants. I think they've been at $10,000 for a number of years and are holding the line on that. If the table was at all inclined, I would advocate for $10,000.
Councillor Blissett.
I agree to that. I'll agree to that. I think it's important community-wide festival, and it's our biggest festival. And I mean, this will be the first of the supports, then there'll be others supporting later. But I do think we should go with the full $10,000.
Is anyone opposed to that? Okay, we'll keep it at the full 10,000. Before we move forward to Mayor Price, we can't see you on the screen. So if you do have something to contribute, just speak through the mic and we'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, so the next applicant is the Summit Community Services Society. They requested $4,645. The recommended award is $3,169. Right.
What was their project?
Symphony of the Kootenays, the request was for $7,500. The recommended award is $4,875. Councillor Stetsky.
Just a quick math question. You divided by 6, to
Seven.
get that number? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
thank you.
6, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
That one.
my NA is because I'm a director and so I couldn't offer a number. Just wanted to make sure the math was done right.
Yeah, that one we did, yeah. Okay, so 4875. The Cranbrook and District Restorative Justice Society have requested $10,000. The recommended award is $8,643. Okay. Okay, so we are now at 126,260 of the available 144,000. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, again, we skipped over Wildside, and again, I just want to remind council of what they said in their application. We would like to provide the opportunity for more community members to discover ways they can live sustainably, connect to the environment, and help Cranbrook thrive. Public presentations will encourage community dialogue regarding environmental subjects. Sustainable living workshops will help community members learn new ways to lessen waste, reuse materials, and make healthier choices. And they also referred to their annual community cleanup that they do. They collect garbage around Cranbrook, and they talk about Spooner Park and Apple Recapture Program. And so, again, I realized that there was nothing allocated, but I would argue that we should give them at least a few $1,000s for the work that they do in our community and trying to make sure people appreciate the environment we have.
I did have a comment as well before we finish up. If it's all okay with council, I'm totally fine with finance rounding up or down to the closest 10, if that makes it a lot less labor intensive for you.
Our check writer, she's okay with writing a 3 or a 0. I'm teasing.
Okay.
It makes no difference to us.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Councillor Stetsky.
In our earlier conversation, do I need to put forward a motion then to provide some funding for wild sites? Is that how we would proceed, and then see whether council says yes or no?
Probably in this situation, that'd be the best bet.
Okay. So I'll put forward a motion that wild site be provided with, I'm just picking a number out of the air, so it's at least $3,000, I guess, to show our support for some of the work that they're doing in Cranbrook.
Do we have a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Stetsky, there's no one to second the motion.
My motion has been defeated.
All right, council. So the total is $278,760 out of a possible $297,084. A below budget amount of $18,324. If council wants to have further discussions about further reductions, we can do that, or
what I can do is I can call the question here, and then we can take the vote. Hey, can I get a motion that council receives the list of 2024 municipal grant program applications and direct staff to notate the funding amount allocated to each applicant based on council's discussion. Can I get a mover? Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Blissett. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. And do I have to read the second motion here? Because we haven't done any adjustments.
We did make a few adjustments based on the averages that were provided.
Then the second motion here is, can I get a motion that council approve the funding list as adjusted? Moved by Councillor Popoff, seconded by Councillor Graham. Discussion? Councillor Ray?
Just a thought for the future. I appreciate that today may not be the day to discuss multi-year funding agreements. I would just like to put that out there for future consideration. I think we've landed in a good place, but I just think when, particularly where we have applications that we see as really core to the community in line with our strategic plan, and we're approving them year after year, there could be some efficiencies just in terms of multi-year agreements that align with the term of a council. We're not trying to set limits on future councils. So I just put that out there for future consideration, and I'm totally fine if we're not including that in our decision-making today.
Okay. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. There were a couple of things brought up earlier, and again, I don't need to resolve them or decide on them today, but one of the questions was, do we want to provide a range with a cap on it going forward? And secondly, was that question of multi-year funding and taking it off the board. So again, we don't have to deal with those today, but we should deal with them at some point, because what's really key is we give all of our agencies lots of notice if we're changing our policy or approach, or quite frankly, if we decide that, that there's just isn't any money to give out. They need lots of notice so they can apply in grants and other direction and know what kind of limit we're setting for them. So the earlier we can provide that information to our community organizations, the better.
Okay, CFO Osborne.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So just a couple of thoughts on what's been said here near the end. I would definitely recommend that council consider a cap on the applicants. I had taken a look at whether it was 5% or 10% of the overall funding level. And a few of our long-term applicants are somewhere in the neighborhood of 8.9%. So if for them to, this was last year's award, so they were receiving 8.9% of the overall award. So, that's something we'll have to think a little bit about is, do we lower it to 5 or is it 10? And 10 is quite high. So if a lot of applications start coming in at 10%, you'll have 10 applications and you'll have fewer agencies being able to receive help from the city. So that's just a thought on the cap. And just in terms of the long-term funding agreement, certainly there are some benefits from staff's perspective in that we're going through this once every 3 years or 5 years or 4 years, whatever the decision ends up being. However, we have even though we have many applicants who have been with us for a long, long time, having them come back every year does suggest that there is some uncertainty around it. If we extend long-term funding agreements, some of that dissipates. And municipalities certainly do it, and successfully so. However, we are in continuing to award amounts annually to the same groups for year after year after year is creating some sort of a dependency. If we then turn around and do long-term funding agreements, are we solidifying that dependency even more so? as a thought, I'm not saying we are, but I'm just saying as a thought. Also, should you end up in a situation where you really do want to make drastic reductions to your funding amount, how are you going to do that? Are you going to reduce the amount that your existing recipients are receiving for the next 5 years? I mean, you could say to them, you don't have to apply every year. You have a 5-year agreement. However, we don't guarantee an amount. You might say that because if something happens and you decide to not do that, having 1 or 2 is one thing, but having 12 or 15 long-term funding agreements might create some, might reduce the flexibility you might need in the future. And also tying it to the end of council's term, now you would be coming, a new council would be coming in. The applicants are there waiting to submit their applications, and the new council is not sure. I mean, I've been through a brand new council where the first thought was nothing. We give nothing. And my advice to them at that time was, I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that you wait, get a year under your belt and see whether or not that is indeed a decision you wish to make. So it's and you yourself came in last year and had to do the, the grant right away. So now all of a sudden you're dealing with people who have had long-standing funding agreements, and now it's up to you to say yes or no for the next 5 or 4 years. So that's could be a bit problematic in my opinion. The other thing I wanted to say was we've had applicants who have received city support for many, 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 many years, and they have had multi-year agreements. Things change, and it's very difficult to shift that change or to incorporate the changing world into those agreements, because after so many years, the group they rely on the money. So I'm probably butchered that a little bit, but I just want council to be aware of what some of the risks are with these long-term funding agreements. And there certainly are some benefits as well.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I am also cautious on the long-term funding. It's definitely, I'm not opposed to the discussion on it. But I think that it is something that we need to, when we're dealing, say, with the Key City Theater or a few of the other ones, it made sense. But I agree, it's maybe it was a generic application, but it's going to take time to write it. Staff will have the process, so it will. There is.
Councillor Stetsky.
I think a good example of that for me anyway is to save the track, where we're committed to $4,000 a year again this year and next year. And do we get an accounting at the end of the year? Because the track was saved years ago. It's in quite good shape. So do they send us a notification about how the $4,000 got spent each year?
Councillor Stetsky through acting mayor. I honestly don't know. I will say it's, of course, not around saving the track anymore. It's about maintaining the track. So, but what they send us in terms of reporting, I honestly don't know, but we can certainly look into that. They just send us an invoice with no backup.
Okay. So if there's nothing further, the motion on the table is that council approve the funding list as adjusted. I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Acting Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Graham.
I would like to make a motion as per our council procedure bylaw, part 7, section 38, subsection 1. Sorry, Marnie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. To move to a committee of the whole to have discussion around the Memorial Arena and its current state.
Okay, Council Bissett, second that.
And now I'll give you my rationale for it. I think we're facing very real challenges, and I don't want to wait till October 16th to start discussions. I think we as a council need to set a bit of a tone for staff to know what, I feel that we could just be running in circles till then. I think we need to set a bit of a tone and set what kind of a priority situation this is. Is it to stop everything and try and find a fix? Or is it we're going to methodically look at it? And I think we need to have that discussion around the table. And it helps provide our discussion. Are we going to scramble? Are we going ASAP? Or what does it look like? Are we going to look at shoring it up so we can open up the Kinsman? So I just thought it would be prudent to have a discussion that provides some direction in a committee of the whole format. So then when staff comes back October 16th, there might be A, B, C, D of options rather than just starting the conversation there. At least we can have a short discussion now so we can get a flavor of council, as well as we all know where council sits, and it's not just somebody phones me or somebody phones Councillor Stetsky or even Mayor Price. We can at least be a unified voice moving forward on the project at hand.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Graham. And sorry, just to clarify, you wanted to go into committee of the whole this evening. And just for clarification, Marnie, is that allowed to have a unscheduled committee of the whole meeting? Okay. Yep. Great. So then what I would suggest is that after we go through the table for mayor and councilor's report, we'll adjourn this meeting and then go into committee of the whole. Does that work for everyone?
Technically, because of our procedure file, we can involve committee of the whole. Out of committee of the whole.
Okay, great. Councilor Ray.
Thank you. I have not read the procedure bylaw, so I'm not at all familiar with it. Is there any, I'm certainly happy to have this conversation just as somebody new to the table. Is there any reference in the bylaw to advance notice that there is an intention to raise an issue and have an unscheduled committee of the whole? Totally happy to have the conversation, just wondering about the process.
Councilor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of this. Just one question. If we're going to discuss this, is this going to be an open? And if it's open, we have to be cognizant of some of the rules of what we can't talk about if it's in closed. So the 3 Ls plus other issues. So are we open or are we closed?
CAO or Vircho.
Council, unless there was like, what we'd have to do is if there was discussion that would qualify as closed, otherwise the meeting would be open.
Yes, thank you. I'm good for that. As long as we realize there are certain things we maybe not be able to talk about because it's in open.
Councilor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. And I was in full intention of being open. This is not getting into the nuts and bolts. It's just, I think it's more so to have a discussion to provide some direction to staff and give some idea of where we sit as a priority. Like, is this a red priority, or is it, you know what, we're going through a process and we're just going to let it happen. So that's more so what the reason I wanted the meeting. So then we know and staff knows at what level this rests around the table.
I have one question for you, Councilor Graham. Between just bringing this up in mayor and council's report and starting this discussion that way, as opposed to going to a committee of the whole, why go into committee of the whole as opposed to just bringing it up as mayor and council report?
Is this working now? If you have a discussion, have to have a discussion that then can provide some direction versus bringing it up. It's like the way I looked at committee of the whole is it that we also gather. It's not just me
oh, I want to talk about the memorial. This way, table, it provides a recommendation that can go to staff on where.
And can you bring a recommendation from committee of the whole if we're not allowed to make a vote? Okay. Great. No, I just wanted to clarify that before voting on this. CAO Furcho.
Just for acting mayor, just for council, like, a practice can be where a committee of the whole is sort of that broader discussion that refines an idea down to a recommendation. And sometimes what a council will do is go through that process in a committee format. And as a committee then recommend back to themselves as council some kind of direction, then you go back into the regular council and you make that direction to staff if you want a firm direction. However, staff are, more than capable of acting on the general sort of consensus of council prior to bringing things that require a direction.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor of going into committee of the whole?
Point of order.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just was looking for that clarification from Marnie.
Yeah, Mayor Price, did you have a comment or were you voting there?
That was a vote in favor of. Thank you.
Under the procedure bylaw, we are on side. So we're good to go.
Okay,
Without telling you all of the legal stuff in the document here, just in short, we're good to go.
okay, so I'll call the question in again. All in favor? Carried. So now do I have to bang the gavel and move us into committee of the whole? Yeah. Councillor Graham.
It doesn't work. I don't know. Does it work now? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, acting Mayor Peabody. The reason I wanted to bring this forward is I just want to know where we're headed as a council on this. The news has just broke, and there is a lot of comments in the community, and been fielding a lot of phone calls. And I thought this is a great way to have a bit of a discussion so that staff kind of knows where to hit the ground running. Because right now it's a major thing. There's a sign on the door that says "Do not enter." We've seen that. We've seen the pictures of the beams in the media. So I think for us to be able to provide some direction on urgency around what our next steps are is important, so staff then can take that back for our October meeting. So there's a bit more preparation, and we might have a bit more of a laneway, because with the timelines that we're in now, and whether it's figure skating or whether it's hockey, these are just starting. So the longer we wait, the more it delays a season, and the more it delays potentially even getting the Kinsman online. So I just wanted to start the discussion off saying I am definitely a proponent of trying to shore up what we can to get that Kinsman ice going. I think that is a priority one. That's just me saying that. And I'm just looking to see where council's at in this discussion.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So I'm appreciate the opportunity to talk with the table about this important issue. Certainly the challenge we're facing today has actually been decades in the making. So it's our job now to do our very best to deal with this challenge, but it is worth recognizing that this has been decades in the making. From my perspective, we now need to be at our most strategic and smart in dealing with this challenge, and considering all available options. And we know that moving forward, I believe this council is very well positioned to truly be working on having long-term asset management so that future councils will not be faced with this kind of challenge. And I'm very confident in our management team to look at all those options and to be bringing strategic recommendations back to council. So I think we need to make sure we're providing helpful governance direction. But we have a very, very smart team that will be looking at the operational options. So again, I would just reiterate, we are facing this challenge and we have to make sure we are very, very strategic and have the, long-term benefit to the community certainly in mind. And also, as Councillor Graham mentioned, if we can safely create an option where we're able to provide ice in the Kinsman, I fully support that, but I think that starts to get into operations. And we've got a very good team who's going to work on those options and bring them back.
Councillor Blissett.
Well, thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we have been doing asset management planning since I think Councillor Stetsky was mayor. And that's when we first started that process. So asset management planning doesn't necessarily save us from a crisis. And we are in that now because we have been investing in that. When this council, not this council, sorry, when a few of us were first elected, we were dealing with buckets in Western Financial Place to collect water. And that was the crisis at that time. And we thought at that time Memorial was fine. And it wasn't until this week that we realized it wasn't. So, but yes, there are some improvements in that process that can happen and have been happening over a long time. That'd be 12 years. So with that, I do wonder though, right now, so if CAO Furcho can let us know what staff are doing as far as alternate ice times, whether it is feasible at all to have the ice plant protected to look after Kinsman. Is that a possibility? If you could let us know, please.
Okay, Councillor Rosette, through acting Mayor Peabody. I guess what I'll do is just start with, kind of where we're at. And yes, asset management is something that all communities strive towards, but the programs sort of evolve over time and certainly can improve and get better. And I think, we're getting there with Cranbrook, and I think, we're going to continue to make improvements, as you mentioned. But as council is aware, and just, for the public record, I guess to say is that, we are doing condition assessments on the buildings and major facilities and this particular one, in the process of doing that, ongoing condition assessment, this one, there was some concerns noted and an engineer was brought in to assess those further. And so that was on Monday. The engineer had made some verbal notations that there was concerns, and that's when council was notified Monday night verbally. We still hadn't received the written report. And then, as an organization, our first priority is the safety of the staff and the public. So the facility was closed just on that verbal direction from the structural engineer ahead of receiving the written report. And then we did, send a media release out with what we know to be honest with the community of the situation. Next was all staff under Trevor's direction were put on high alert for like an all hands on deck to try to restructure ice time between the available ice space at Western Financial and Cranbrook, and talking to Kimberly about the reopening of the Marysville Arena earlier. I was just in a meeting at lunch today with the city of Kimberly. Like, everybody's pulling together with trying to reallocate ice time, with the priority being on youth. And the next is, the discussions around next steps and sort of both thinking of quick fixes and strategic operational levels going forward. And I know, talking to Trevor today, the engineering firm is taking some of this discussion outside of the scope of work they originally were in, looking at helping support us with options, and a lot of the members of the business community coming forward with ideas and offers. And so there's a tremendous groundswell of support coming from the community. It's just now, as I said, I'm preparing staff to bring that report back from the engineer and some will go forward options for our October meeting, because everything is kind of at play right now. And so priority one was having a procedure for safe entry in the building so that we can get access to people's stuff so they can use them in other places. And as Councillor Graham said, is there a way that we can make it safe for staff to operate the ice plant? Like, is there a way that we could shore the building up to make it safe for this year? Like, all of those questions are at play. And as staff, I was, needing a little time for us to prepare for the October meeting. But certainly for today, if council does articulate some direction to staff of what you feel is a priority, we would take that, and that would give us more direction and better support to know what we should be coming back with in October. And I think that's great.
Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you. So I have kind of four things on my list, and number one, it has been brought up, is trying to see if we can make the ice plant area safe and secure somehow to keep the Kinsman rink going. Number two was looking at options, and I mentioned the other day, we might be able to redirect people to Kimberley. They have two arenas. I think Marysville is still up and running, and of course the Kimberley arena. Canal Flats, excellent ice service. We talked to people that have been up there and played in tournaments, etc. That might be an option. The other thing I'm trying to recall, and we'd have to check with Fernie, but when their rink had the fatalities and they had to close it, I'm trying to remember whether they actually created artificial ice outside in the rink that they set up. So in other words, moving some of that ice freezing pipe capability and putting it in the ground in a temporary rink. I don't know for sure, but I know they were working hard to provide an alternative outdoor rink with boards around it so you could bounce pucks off it, etc. The third thing is future options, and of course we'll need an options paper from city staff or a contractor or whomever on, repairing it, tearing it down, putting in a recreation complex, along with associated projected costs to go with each one. It's a little longer term, of course, to get to that, but we will need that at some point. And then in terms of public awareness, I think if we are aware of other concerns, when we know the dam, now we know this one, which came as a surprise, but if there are other ones, I think we should be putting out some kind of a notification to the public. And again, this is down the line a ways of other concerns that we have in Cranbrook for long-term funding that we're going to need to deal with. And let's let the public know right up front so that it doesn't come as a surprise to the public in future as well. So those are the four things I would put forward.
Am I invisible still?
No, I have you speaking after Councillor Graham.
Oh, no problem. Yep. I didn't know if I was back on my camera's working again.
Oh,
Thank you.
And I guess acting mayor through to Councillor Stetsky, your last item, what you described is the asset management plan, where all the facilities, there's a maintenance schedule that's funded through time, right through the end of the facility's lifespan. But that goes back to and then what do you do at the end of that lifespan? Do you replace the facility and where and how? And so those are the big bumps you see in the long-term financial plan of those replacements of the major facilities in time over time. But what we ran into here and what you might run into in other places is that ongoing condition assessment and reassessment of things through time, because a garbage truck, for example, might wear out faster than it would have, or the wear and tear on the fire trucks we're seeing now from more times out of the hall than they were seeing with just responding to fires. So sometimes, and in this case, I don't know what the history was on the wood and the extent, the lifespan projected for the wood, and if it's failing prematurely from that, it's having that really strong asset management plan that is more, rather than a process and a program that's within the administration of staff, is as Councillor Ray has said before, more of an interactive public discussion that happens between staff and council, so that you see projections over time of those big bumps of the major assets that need to be replaced through time in the next 20, 30 years. And I think then that picture becomes a lot more clear for people. We're just having this discussion now on the sewer lagoons and the fact that, they were full and pretty smelly, and what does it cost to prevent that in the future, and maintaining the sewer lagoons and increasing the the rate and scale of the cleanouts and replacing the aerators and looking at that program, like you've been exposed to that, and it's getting that into something that has more public interest and an ability for people to understand. Because right now, a lot of asset management discussions are, I don't know what's the best way to say it, is it's very technical and financial, and it's not reaching the general public. So we need to find a way to have that more public, I guess.
Mayor Price.
Yeah, thank you. I was just commenting along the line of what CEO Virtual just said. Typically, our communication in regard to, capital projects and any kind of issues like this is at budget time. They hear it at budget time, and that's the end of it. Certainly, the memorial, sorry about that, starting with the memorial. I think we need to develop a comprehensive media strategy here and to keep the public informed with the facts. We have to deal with the facts that we're presented, and then prepare them for the impact of potential solutions on that. And I guess that what this does is this just heightens our responsibility probably to take that further. We know we've got some really serious budget challenges going forward, whether they're inherited or otherwise. And I think that we just have to continue. It's an education process by keeping them informed. One of the things I saw, during both of my campaigns, 90% of the people, or at least 80% in this community, are not informed. And it's whether it be their choice or not, but I think we have a responsibility to be better and to keep them informed, and not just what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the potential impact that's going to be on them. Because make no mistake, we've got some pretty serious impact, to the community and to the taxpayer going forward on this and some of these other projects. So that's just a thought. That's a long line of what Mark was just saying. And I don't want to go operational, Mark, but just my last 2 days, today and yesterday, have been pretty chaotic here. So I haven't had a lot of time to be fully versed on all the stuff that's coming out. I see there's a placard, and I don't know what it actually states, but it's on the door, and I don't want to get operational. I'm just curious if they've considered, obviously there's a fear of building collapse, and it's one thing about the interior they build them, but typically collapse zone is there's a formula for it, typically 1.5. The distance is 1.5. The distance away from the building for the height of the building. So I'm just saying, if we're doing that, we should probably isolate key areas that we're concerned about collapse around the building as well, so that there's nobody parked there or any type of use or activity occurring there. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Price. So the placard is a DNO, do not occupy, and with that there is a provision for an area around the external part of the building that's actually listed on the placard. So we're just starting in that process. Those DNO notices were affixed today, and that is part of the process moving forward. So thank you for that, making that public.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. So first off, it's a 73-year-old building, 73-year-old building. So it should be no surprise that it's at its end of life. The challenge was, to the public and to us on council, it was a surprise that it's probably at its end of life. And we've talked about that. So the other part is, yes, maybe we can get the Kinsman Arena open for ice, but if we can't, it's still available. So is there some non-ice activities we might want to think about to be utilized? Heating and ventilation might be a challenge in the winter, but if everyone's out there exercising, like rollerblading, racquetball sports, lacrosse with the boards up, maybe it's still something that it can be utilized for during while we're waiting to hear where we're going with that. And then thirdly, it's 20 days to the next council meeting. And I know, I thank you for being in contact with the stakeholders and doing all those things, but I'm just wondering, the public, as you're hearing on your social medias and your phone calls, they're thinking that that, oh, this is just a winter thing and it'll be back up and running for next year. There's some mentality out there that are thinking that. And we need to let the public know if there's merit to that, or if this is a long-term thing that we need to, and everyone needs to think of going forward. I'm wondering, is between now and council on the 16th, a public open house where it's not a yelling and screaming, but there's postcards and people to talk about certain issues. We do that in public hearings on other matters. Maybe this might be an opportunity between now and council to have staff-led open house to just share what we know, what we don't know, and reach out to a broader group than just our immediate stakeholders. Just a thought.
CEO for
Acting Mayor through to Councillor Popoff. I think I would just consider that premature because what we're acting on now was like a condition of, like, staff had concerns of the state of some of that facility, engaged a structural engineer to do an assessment. The structural engineer has come back with a very brief report just on what they observed with the structure in the beams, and sort of now the next steps are around, how bad is it? Can it be fixed? We don't know any of that yet. So that'll be some of what we talk about, the work ahead and the cost to get that work done and timelines for engaging the right professionals to do that. And what does it take? Like, can the beams be repaired? Or do they need to be replaced, which triggers code upgrades of the rest of the building, and on and on we go. But we don't know that information yet. So I think talking to the public about that might be premature. What we're hoping, though, is that we might have more information by the time we come back to council on the 16th. And that was kind of what I was talking to the staff about, is that information that might be a little more what you're looking for.
So thank you. So in the meantime, if we are asked, we either say nothing and go like this, or we say, well, the jury's not out whether this is a short-term fix or a long-term. So I think it's fair for us to say we don't know, but it may not be a winter season. It might be multiples. We don't know yet, and staff are working with our consultants on that. And what about using Kinsman for a non-ice opportunity?
Certainly Kinsman is going to remain open as a facility. But one of the, very first items is, as Councillor Graham said, is looking at, can we, the consultant has put in his report that, although it's been deemed do not occupy under a qualified professional, we're now having that work done to create a protocol for safe entry to the building. And under that protocol, can we create a safe protocol for operating the ice plant? So before we talk about dry surface, let's see whether that is an option first.
So that, I agree, that would be plan A. Plan B would be, how do we utilize it if we can't put the ice in? Thanks.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I guess like the whole thing about this discussion, what is not long term, we don't know. I was just looking for more of where we are at for the next 30 days, really, because I think that's where I think CAO could definitely use some help in, is like, okay, so if council's amenable or saying, okay, let's try and get the Kinsman ice surface back in, it gives you a bit of direction to go to staff and say, all right, on the 16th, maybe prepare something, or we can focus more on that while we're still looking at the memorial itself. And so that's more so why I wanted to have that discussion, is about the immediate 30 to 45 days, because I know the memorial itself is going to be a longer term discussion as we are learning more about the full scope of what is happening. So that was the just around. And so at least, like Councillor Popoff alluded to, the next council meeting is 20 days away. At least we can provide a bit of direction now, so that in 20 days we can have a bit more around what we're hoping to see happen there. So I thank you for entertaining my motion on this.
Great. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I did read the report this afternoon, Mark, and was there not something in there about a concern for the area around the Memorial Arena? And that's why I'm wondering whether that opening the Kinsman Arena may be problematic, because they seem to suggest there was a larger zone that you needed to be concerned about.
Councillor Stetsky through Acting Mayor Peabody, that's correct, and that's what part of that, the do not occupy, that now our building department is looking at. So the engineer issues the main order that says, you know, close the building. Now our staff, our building department did put the DNO notices on there, and that includes looking at that safe zone around it. So that's the assessment and work that's ahead too. And that's what I mean, like literally yesterday and today, we're responding to what we know and treating it as an emergency, so to speak, to ensure safety of the staff and the public. And as we move forward, all of those questions will become more clearly answered than where we are today.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think this gives argument too, and this might be the asset management plan that we're talking about, but during the budget process, not just having a 5-year budget, but maybe having a 10 and then a 20-year budget just to see what sort of large capital projects are coming down the line. So I'm all favoring that. Any further discussion? Sorry, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, just quickly, because we have a neighbor on the other side of the Memorial Arena as well, and a lot of services provided out of that for the public. So we need to know if there's a danger zone, how far that danger zone goes and whether it would impact them as well.
And as I said, that was, the building department was on the scene today, and just, you know, the notices have went up, and now that's what we're working on. So.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, then we'll enter back into the regular council meeting. And that leaves us at mayor and councilors' reports. Start with Councillor Graham, Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. Mayor Price.
Nothing to report, thanks.
Okay, I have one thing that'll be really quick. I'm just curious, Marnie, if I want to do a notice of motion, do I have to do a notice of motion for an item that has no budget implications? Or can I just make a motion? What?
It's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
You'd
Do a
have to
notice
get
of motion.
council's approval to waive 24-hour notice of that. If you wanted to give notice of a motion right now for the October 16th meeting, you can do that. We'll make a note of it, and then we would include it on the October 16th.
Then I'll do a notice of motion.
Okay.
So my notice of motion is that I believe it's timely that we create a policy for staff and council and using AI. Although I do feel that AI is a valuable tool for our city and staff. I think it's important that there are some guidelines as far as what information staff are sharing on AI platforms, and just general guidelines on the general use of it, making sure that we're not plagiarizing other people's material and bringing that forward to council or bringing forward false information. So yeah, on October 14th, I will just bring forward a motion suggesting that we create a policy in the use of AI.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll note it. I believe staff are looking at that anyways, but go ahead and
Great.
put it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I just noticed that our iPads are going to be updated again tonight, so
Yeah.
Let's hope for a good outcome.
Great. Anything further? I'll get a motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Graham, Councillor Stetsky, all in favor? Meeting adjourned.